welcome back everyone to Nutty Nekoma and to one of the best series on this entire channel. We are back with Fainting in Front of the Team, Pretty Setter edition, and this time we have another bonus part for Kageyama. It is post-time skip this time, just like we had with Atsumu. And yeah, I'm really excited for this. I hope you are too. It won't be as much of a challenge as it will be, well, just let yourself be surprised at the end. Also, this had to be split into two parts because it got a little bit too long. So if you don't want to miss the second part, subscribe. Kageyama knew the moment his fingertips touched the ball that it was off. He had made a mistake when positioning and it slipped. His eyes narrowed and he let out a small gasp for air, holding his breath and tensing to salvage the toss. Ushijima still got it and made the point. Kageyama listened intently as the ball hit the floor, his blood rushing in his ears. It was an off-putting sensation. His breathing got louder than the cheers surrounding them. For a brief moment, everything was oddly calm to him. The glare of the light blurred the crowd around them. His eyes strayed over the mass of people briefly. Somewhere among them were his boyfriends. Yamaguchi and Tsukishima had come to cheer them on, and on the other side of the net waited Hinata, his eyes glowing intensely with a hunger to win. And even though he knew they were there, had spotted them just a few minutes ago and came face to face with the orange-haired as he attempted to block a spike, now he could see neither of them as the light blinded him. Suddenly there was a hand on his back, and with a touch, the noise returned, louder than before. He flinched. That was a good toss. Could you aim a little higher for the next one? Kageyama nodded with a small bow. He liked Ushijima. In high school, he hadn't given their rivalry much thought, but now as a setter, he appreciated the directness of the spiker. He was easy to work with, and not deterred by Kageyama's odd nature or intensity for the sport. He shared it. That was what he appreciated most since going pro. The players on the court, both on his side of the net as well as on their opponent's side, understood. They were consumed by the same passion burning him from the inside. The Raven took a deep breath to recalibrate. For a brief moment he closed his eyes, listening to the sound of the whistle that would start the game again. It tore the air, and at once his eyes snapped open. His vision was limited once more to the court, and for a moment it worked. He processed the movements of all the players present with his usual speed and adjusted his position accordingly. He passed the ball precisely again and again, as it flew between the players, always just short of touching the ground. The longer the rally went on, the louder his heartbeat, and consequently the rushing in his ears seemed to become. His vision shrunk further. As soon as he noticed, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to see past it. At once, the sensations from the crowd crashed down on him, and upon the next step, he stumbled. He managed to regain his balance, but it was too late for the block to be efficient. The signal of the whistle ending the set echoed in the hall, and cheers erupted from the MSBY fans. Kageyama barely heard them over his own breathing. He followed his teammates to the bench and reached for a towel. Don't despair, we have another set to go. The attack combo over the middle is strong, but not unstoppable. The setter listened patiently, straining his ears to catch everything over his wildly beating heart. A few words got lost, but he understood the adjustment to the strategies. The encouragement was mostly lost on him anyway at this point. It felt like he didn't have the energy anymore to react to everything. His only focus was on the game. Everything else, basic needs, emotional processing, or an assessment of what was happening, could wait. Today, the sensory overload set in earlier than usual. It was a bad day, and the best he could do right now was to try and limit his sensory input and control what to focus on. It took a good part of his energy and ability to process everything, but that was fine as long as he could proceed to play. He wouldn't let his team down. He would, in the very least, finish this game. Kageyama? Yes, coach. His answer came delayed a few seconds, but not enough to be noticeable, hopefully. Sit down for a moment. You need some rest before the last set. We'll switch you in. A sigh akin to relief escaped his mouth as he bowed and followed the instructions he was given. Usually this would have bothered him more, especially in a game against Hinata. A few years ago it would have caused old fears and doubts to resurface, but he had worked on that since, and today he could muster the energy to care extensively. He already knew he would be switched in again. The best he could do was gather what little strength he had left for when that moment came. However, something odd happened the moment he sat down. It was as if his brain alternated between taking in too much and too little information. His breathing was even louder than before, and the sound of the crowd went from muffled to overwhelming and back. He felt shivers running through his body as he lowered his head and tried to ground himself. Deep breaths, he reminded himself in his head, and after the fourth serve of the third set, he managed to lift his head again. He tried getting back into the game, but could not even decipher the points or who was leading. The movements of the players he was used to analyzing suddenly became chaotic. His gaze danced over the court hectically until he found the brightest smile combined with a crown of orange hair. Focusing on Hinata helped. He was fast and chaotic himself, but something about him let him know that it would be okay. Everything would be okay. He calmed, and when it was time to join the game again, he felt ready. His legs still felt a little jittery when he stepped into his position to serve, but he didn't fail to land it. He made 2 points like this, while at the third he miscalculated his steps and the ball landed outside the court. Sorry. His team shook it off and went back into position, but Kageyama clenched his teeth. He never struggled this much to get back into his rhythm. When he lifted his hands to set the ball, they were shaking. He stared at them confused as he forced them into the correct position. All he remembered after that was following the ball with his eyes. He traced it to the position he calculated for Hoshiomi to spike. From the corner of his eye he watched the spiker leap into the air and then... nothing. Black. It lasted only a second, but by the time he was back with them, Atsuma prepared to set for the counterattack and he had to react fast. It wasn't fast enough, and Sakusa made the point. From there he walked back behind the outer line of the court to serve. Kageyama wiped the sweat away and zeroed in on the spiker. Sakusa's spikes were fast and aggressive. Even being the setter, he needed to be prepared to receive it. The ace knew that and targeted him. As soon as the whistle announced the continuation of the game, Sakusa spiked the ball in his direction. Kageyama rushed forward to receive it, but his arms weren't fast enough. He managed to bring his chest beneath the ball. For a few milliseconds, he stood watched as the ball flew high into the air. It was as if time froze. The shouts of his teammates hung in the air, and further back the crowd cheering. Then, a sharp pain cut through the scene like a blade cutting through a picture, leaving him only with the darkness beyond. He registered briefly, his chest hurting as though a hot knife had been pierced through his heart, but he could react little more than by his eyes widening before he was swallowed by the void. the blink of an eye, all he heard was the rushing of blood in his ears, before that, too, was gone. Hinata was watching his opponents excitedly. He was itching to jump again and spike or block their attack. Even this late in the game, he didn't waste a thought on exhaustion. The only thing momentarily getting him out of his focus was when he noticed Kageyama staggering once or twice. It was odd, and he wondered if his coach had noticed as well. He must have, because he kept him on the bench at the beginning of the next set. When he returned, he seemed almost back to normal, but Hinata still noticed the slight signs of irritation on the setter. In between rallies, he glanced over at their boyfriends, smiled, and even waved briefly. Once they would get home, they'd have to spoil Tobio rotten. After he defeated him, of course. A bright smile spread on the ginger's face, and he cheered Sakasa on to give them a point advantage with his serve. It half worked. He managed to force Kageyama to receive, meaning the setter wouldn't be able to set. Just as Hinata sidestepped to place the block, the game was suddenly interrupted. The referee pulled them to a stop with a whistle. Confused, the spiker looked at him before his attention was caught by a commotion on the other side of the court. Kageyama hadn't gotten back up again after he received the ball, and was now swarmed by his teammates. Oshijima motioned for them to stay back, and the coach gave them further instructions as the paramedics rushed through. Oh geez, looks like Toby overdid it. Hinata nodded slowly, concern spreading within his chest. It wasn't exactly new for them to take things a bit too far in volleyball, but it's been a while since one of them fainted. He felt immediately sorry for all the times he didn't take this seriously enough and glanced at where Tsukishima and Yamaguchi had been just a few minutes ago. Now he spotted them making their way down to the court, suddenly growing more frantic, and not just them. A collective gasp seemed to have taken the hall. Hinata frowned, but when he turned back, he froze. The paramedic closest to Kageyama had her hands over his chest and pressed down on it in a fast rhythm. For a moment his brain malfunctioned, and he refused to understand what this meant. Oh shit. Hinata didn't speak, didn't even think about it as he dove underneath the net to get to Kageyama. A hand around his wrist stopped him before he could reach his beloved. Wait, give them space. No. Kageyama! He felt his chest constrict as one of the paramedics opened a small box, a defibrillator, and waited for the instructions on the device. Chaos erupted around them, but Hinata's attention was on Kageyama alone. How could this have happened? An injury, sure. Fainting, well, it happens, sometimes, but this was none of that. How had simple exhaustion turned so quickly into something so dangerous? He tried once more to get closer instinctively, still restrained by Mion, who struggled to keep him at bay as he used all his muscles, usually designed for jumping and running, to try and get past him. Shoyo, calm down. Atsumu tried in vain to soothe him as he saw the first tears staining the spiker's cheeks, but Hinata wasn't listening. What happened? What is going on? Tsukishima made it to the edge of the court with Yamaguchi in tow. He felt nauseous at what he found, and the smaller let out a wounded sound before hiding his face against the blonde's chest as he turned around and clung to him for support. The taller stood frozen in place as he watched the paramedics trying to keep his boyfriend alive. He tried to sort the flood of information, to dig in his memory what this meant, how he could help. Mere steps from them now, Hinata still struggled against the grip of his teammates while Yamaguchi began to tremble in his arms and threw fearful glances at the scene in front of them. Sir, you can't be here, A security guard had spotted them and must have mistaken them for curious bystanders, but before Tsukishima could even think about defending them, Oshijima and Bokuto came to their aid, briefly explaining their connection to Kageyama and shooed them away. Behind them, Sakusa had gotten awfully pale, and Atsumu found himself torn between soothing him and keeping Hinata at bay. Thomas quickly joined Mian to take the setter's place. Tsukishima knew he should help. He ought to get to Hinata and make sure he was alright until he could check on Kageyama, but he couldn't move. His muscles refused any command his brain provided, while his thoughts were running 1,000 miles an hour. The defibrillator detected a shockable rhythm, so he didn't flatline. The paramedics alternated between stepping back and providing CPR, trying to get his heart to beat normally again. This was life-threatening. Kageyama was in danger. Suddenly, they stepped back, and for a moment, Tsukishima assumed the worst, even though he knew that they wouldn't have stopped so quickly had his heartbeat not stabilized. They spoke quickly with the coach, and a stretcher was organized. It all happened so fast, and suddenly he was moving, dragged along by Yamaguchi, who followed the paramedics and joined by Hinata. What happened? We'll bring him to the hospital to find out. Which hospital? They provided the information, and at once all three of them made their way to the car without looking back. Reporters greeted them with their typical lack of empathy in these situations, and hadn't it been for the rest of the players and coaches, Tsukishima is sure he would have punched someone. This was a mess. Tsukishima was sure without at least 3 of the top players of the game, judging by the fact that Sakusa now looked seconds from collapse himself, it would probably have to be postponed. This wasn't simply a player getting injured. He almost died, and it shook all of them to their core. Tsukishima still couldn't breathe properly, and he was sure he would only be able to once he got the confirmation that Kageyama would be alright. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I really hope you liked it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like. It would really help this channel out. And don't forget to subscribe if you don't want to miss out on the next part. In the next part, I will explain why, and obviously there will be some more emotional hurt comfort and stuff like that. But you know me, no bad endings here. Also, there will be another video coming out tomorrow. Check that one out if you like, and tell me under the pinned comment what your favorite quote or moment of this video was. A special thanks as always goes out to my Nerdy Neckos. Thank you so much for Toby, Ethan, and Salman that you joined the Nerdy Neckos. I'm so happy, and you make me now I have now to have 2 text rows. I cannot explain myself properly. I'm so excited. I feel like a real YouTuber right now, okay? This is shocking for me. Here are the social media. Here is more content. Check that out if you want. And now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day.
Step 3, think real hard about what you want to be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.